Hello and welcome all of you lovely listeners back to Joygasm, where we chat about video games, movies, and pop culture. I'm Russ, Xbox Live, Toaster 360. He's Steve, Xbox Live, Stevavitch. And we take a moment to be thankful. In episode 97 today, November 24th, 2018. We have no gaming or movie news this week. We're going to focus on our topic of the day, which is the success, fall, and revival of Japanese developers, which you can fast forward to if you look at the timestamp located in this episode's detailed section of iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Otherwise, just keep listening. What are you thankful for this Thanksgiving, Steve?
I'm not thankful for anything, Russ.
Well,
you know, I'm not thankful for anything. Well, this year, I'm unthankful.
You're unthankful. Are you lobbying to get rid of Thanksgiving altogether?
Nah. I come back to the same things that I've been thankful for, but it comes back every single year. I think after Thanksgiving, you start to forget about what you're thankful for. And then when Thanksgiving comes around, you go, man, I'm thankful that I got food, clothes on my back, shelter, job.
I always like the holiday name, Thanksgiving. Like if you separate those two words, you have thanks and giving. And I have now just realized I haven't really done that much giving on the holiday of Thanksgiving, so I'm going to have to. I need to remedy that.
We've all been keeping it secret from you for the last 15 years, but it's adding up.
Selfish bastard.
Another year, Russ not giving a crap about anything.
He just sits there and porks out at the dinner table, and then just takes a nap. See you guys. Show yourselves out. Bye. Wake me up when the pumpkin pie is served. We make sure there's whipped cream too. Why don't we have gravy? I can tell you didn't stuff this turkey.
Yeah, really.
No, but it's really cool to be able to take just the time out of the year to be able to really look around and be thankful for just an awful lot. I think you and I both have a lot to be thankful for.
We do, Russ. I mean, I think people living in America alone have plenty to be thankful for altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the whole quote unquote first world problems kind of thing. I think that people tend to get a little bit on the complaining side of things. And I don't know. I think it's important to take a look at just everything that you do have. And I know for me, I definitely have a lot to just really raise a glass to and say thank you to and everything else. And I don't know. I think I'm going to be making more of an effort to volunteer some more of my time during the Thanksgiving holiday, like maybe
the time you don't have, Russ. Yeah, that's a pleasant thought, a pleasant fiction, Russ.
Well, there are certain types of volunteer organizations that make it a point to like they'll have like the soup kitchen stuff that they'll do some extra hands and that sort of thing. I think it's important that especially given the fact of how I'm not getting any younger, Steve, and I feel as though I'm finally in a position where I can give back with a happy heart, and I'm going to drag you along with me. Don't think you can get out of it, Steve.
Right. You know what? I remember one year I think we had no electricity for 2 weeks. I think we had a storm.
2 weeks.
we had a storm or there was a car accident to a telephone pole or a power line. I don't know what it was. We didn't have any power for 2 weeks. And that
was it really 2 weeks?
I don't know. I don't recall if it was exactly 2 weeks, but it was a long time. It wasn't like, it was out for a day. What are we going to do? Sort of thing. It was a while.
Yeah.
And after about 4 or 5 cold...
A day without electricity is like 2 weeks to Steve.
Yeah. I need internet. And so I think after the fourth or fifth cold shower, not like the cold water you just wash your hands in, but like a really cold shower.
I remember that.
I thought, man, I just need hot water. Like it was so cold, you're in and you're out as fast as you can. You could, I mean,
well, it wasn't like I think that happened like during the colder months too. It wasn't like it was in the middle of summertime.
No, yeah, in the middle of summertime it would have been absolutely fine, but that was in the wintertime and it was friggin' freezing outside. And then we go, you're inside, but the water in the pipes is almost frozen, and so then you're trying to bathe with it, and you're like,
test of manhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Try not to scream like a girl.
I'm gonna be able to have kids after this. I don't know. So
in the igloo does not even begin to cover it. Okay.
Steve's voice is going up quite a few decibels. What's happening down there?
So, I do remember that though. I remember how like I was trying to like wash my hair as fast as possible and like soap up as fast as possible, just because I could tell like my tolerance of the absolute cold was just reaching a point of just no return.
I mean, at the end you feel really refreshed, but you also feel like you're about to get. So feel like you're about to get hypothermia at the same time. Like, man, I feel clean. Man, I feel like I'm getting really sick. So
I'm awake. Forget coffee. Just step in a cold shower in the dead of winter.
And so, yeah, at that winter season, we were thankful. We're like, oh, let's go around the table, say what everyone's thankful for. Oh, I'm thankful for this, that, and the other. I'm thankful for hot water. I can imagine. I mean, people way long ago not having hot water, or people today, you know, in third world countries or whatever, who might not have hot water. Yeah. And if it gets really cold, then my goodness, I mean, they're probably used to it, but at the same time, maybe not. Maybe that's just something you put up with.
I totally forgot about that. I really did think that you were just mistaken in some other kind of story, but no. Now when you were out the shower thing, I remember that. I mean, it was at least 1 week.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah. I forgot if it was 2 weeks also, but it was. I thought it was longer than one. Then the power like came around like yes, yes, hallelujah. So anyway, I remember that because this weekend when I was doing the dishes, I had a sink full of dishes, and I turned on the water, and the water spouting out was so cold. I had to put the gloves on to actually wash the dishes till the water heated up.
Weenie. So what are you thankful for this year, Steve?
Like I said, I think that it's just the same things that you forget about every year until it gets to be this time. I mean, the jobby job.
Yeah.
I'm thankful to have money to provide for myself. I'm thankful to be living amongst so much family.
Yeah.
Even though we don't all see each other as much as we should, except with the exception of you.
I don't want to see you.
Yeah. I live 8 minutes away, but it's still too close. So anyway, but yeah, I'm glad to have love in my life.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Glad to be a happy uncle. You know, One day you'll be an uncle, Russ. Well, hopefully.
Hopefully you're not sterile.
Yeah. We've been trying. I don't know what's going on. Oh, man.
Well, that's good. I mean, I have a lot to be thankful for as well, in terms of just like what you said, like just having not only the immediate family, but also the extended family. And I mean, just even like the fact that we get the opportunity to do the Joygasm podcast. I think that is something that I'm very thankful for. I'm thankful that you're local, so that we're able to go on this magic carpet ride together. Mono y mono.
Mono y mono.
But yeah, I mean, I would say overall, I mean, I feel as though the goblet is overflowing, as they say. And I really want to take a moment just to wish all of our listeners a happy Thanksgiving as well, because it's an American holiday, but I feel as though it doesn't have to be exclusive to America, that it can be celebrated internationally. I think that it's one of those universal types of humankind kind of things, you know.
Indeed.
Take the time to be thankful and give a little.
You know, One thing I think I need to say too that I'm thankful for is to have low drama in terms of family holidays and family get-togethers and whatnot. I can remember so many of my friends who would, in a way, almost not look forward to the holidays, or they would ask to come over during our holiday. We're like, we already have lots of plans. I don't want to say no, but then they would tell me about how sometimes these family get-togethers would turn out to be really dramatic, and it just makes you grateful that you don't have a lot of that drama.
Yeah. My heart goes out to the families out there that do have to deal with that. And, I was thinking about how occasionally back when we were younger, we would actually invite some people to our house for Thanksgiving who perhaps didn't have family close by or had a falling out of sorts or whatever it is. And it was just nice because, it just embracing those people as part of your extended family was always just like this. I don't know. It's a lovely gesture, but it's one of those things too that I find myself thinking, why do we only do that one day out of the year? Like the very next day, it's kind of like, get off my lawn. You just gave me hugs and pumpkin pie yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm maxed out on my giving. Get out. So, I think we got it would be just, I don't know. The reflective side of me is just, it'd be nice if we could extend this into 365 days of the year. I don't know. It's a work in progress. We'll just call it that. Work in progress. But anyway, what have you been playing? What have you been watching, Steve?
Let's see. Well, I watched Fallen Kingdom, Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom.
Okay.
And that wasn't too bad. I think Chris Pratt is, I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but I think he's getting to the point where he's too good for the series. Like the series, you can tell they're just trying to milk it for money, But his
Jurassic Park 23.
Yeah, I think
the world really is chaos. Will you put the DNA down? We all know how this is going to end.
We mixed human DNA with dinosaur DNA.
Call him Dino.
DNAosaurus. So anyhow,
if you thought the last dinosaur was advanced, check out this one.
So anyway, I think I don't know. They left the door open for another,
of course,
sequel. I mean, why not? But
make that money.
But I don't know. I guess you have to see it to kind of understand. It just seems like his acting skills and the stuff that he's done, like other movies, and he goes back to this, and it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
One thing was really cool is in the special features section, he has this little vlog that he goes around. He talks with his makeup artist or the stunt dude or the effects guys or people who drive around with what's the thing called? It's a heavy duty truck, but it has the long arm with the camera on it. I forgot what it's called. They have a term for it, but
are you talking about the crew, the behind the scenes?
Yeah, well, the behind the scenes crew, but like the specific vehicle that's like a heavy duty pickup truck, but it has this long arm that with the camera on it that it can. Capture.
Each crew I feel like has their own kind of nickname for that, but okay. I know what you're talking about.
But anyway. So he goes around to the behind the scenes and he just does this vlog with all the people involved in the movie. Mm-hmm. And I just thought that was so cool. I'd never seen that in a special features section before, but he took the time to do that. And I thought, he's the main star of the movie, and now he's shifting focus to all the folks behind the scenes. And they're like, Chris Pratt, how you doing? Yeah. On camera now, okay. Yeah, it was really neat. I watched all the little vlogs that he did. So
if you watch Pirates of the Caribbean behind the scenes, I think it was either Dead Man's Chest or the third one. I can't remember what was it? What was the name of the third film? It's not Dead Men Tell No Tales. It was
Dead Men Tell
World's End. At World's End,
might be that one.
Well, anyway, the actor who plays one of the pirates, he's the one who says, "Hello, Pulpit." You know that guy?
Yeah.
He took it upon himself to do something very similar where he was doing a vlog thing, but on the set of Pirates of the Caribbean. I really enjoyed it. I loved watching that behind the scenes thing. Just kind of gave more of an in-depth thing. And I don't know if he was approached to do this sort of thing or if he just did it off the cuff. And then the folks at Disney were like, hey, do you mind if we use that? Because it was just a really nice, I don't know.
Real and
personal kind of casual way of showing some stuff. It wasn't all dressed up the way typical featurettes are, that sort of thing.
Plus, it gives credit where credit's due. I mean, at the end of the movie, the credits roll, but no one pays attention to those, really, But if you have the special feature, you can actually match a face with the name and have a voice, and that person's actually real.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it was good.
What else you been up to?
Let's see. Well, I started watching Black Sails again. I'm trying to finish that series. I keep doing.
What season are you on?
I'm on the 3rd, I think.
Going on 8th.
It's funny because the show started off really slow, but by now it's actually very compelling. Usually the first season is really compelling, and then it starts to fall off after they keep on bringing out the seasons. But now it's actually pretty good. It took a while, but I'm glad I stuck in there. So
that seems to be the general consensus with Black Sails. I've talked to other people who kind of echo the same sentiment.
Yeah. Let's see. Otherwise, I'm in chapter 3 of Red Dead Redemption 2.
As am I.
Man, I tell you, that game. I'm so good.
Oh, that game.
Man, that game, bro.
Oh, that game.
That game. And I caught my first 20-pound fish, sturgeon.
Congratulations. I have no idea what a 20-pound fish looks like yet. I've done some fishing in the game, but I think the largest was like a 5-pounder.
What, like a big mouth bass? Steelhead or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Bass are everywhere. You can start to catch bass and, okay, another one. Start throwing them back.
Yeah.
Did you meet the guy who said, "Oh yeah, send me fish, and I stuff them and I sell them"? Okay, so I met that dude, and he said to mail him the fish, and so I've been catching fish and trying to send them to him, and I can't do it. Like I go to the post office, I'm like, here's a fish, I
have a fish to mail. They're like, it's not gonna fit it in an envelope.
So I'm like, I don't know how to do it, and I went back and I looked it up on YouTube to see people who have done it, and you go in there and you open up your satchel, your man purse, and you pull out the fish and you send it. And I'm like, okay, trying.
The NPC's like,
looking at you like, and what?
That option is not available to me.
Oh boy.
No, I love the fishing in that game. I love how you use the analog stick to reel stuff back in and just for some reason, like every fishing type of mechanic I've played in different types of games have always been really enjoyable, which is weird because I would think that they would just be boring as opposed to doing the real thing. Because you and I both love to fish in real life. But I'm going to be spending probably a significant amount of time in Red Dead Redemption 2 just having fun fishing because it's just nice to be able to see. And I think I got a map. I think that the same dude who you described just now, doesn't he give you like some kind of like map of like where all the best fishing holes are or something?
Yeah, and he starts telling you about all the legendary fish.
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, I once when I was riding around on my horse, I stopped this small little posse from killing these people off a train. And so I shot all of them, of course. Judge, jury, executioner. And so all the innocents ran off. And the train was just sitting there. So I thought, well, I wonder if I can drive the train or conduct the train. I don't know what you do in that sense. So I got in the train. I made it go.
Really?
Yeah. And I went all the way around the map. No reward for that, by the way, Russ. No accomplishment. So
I wonder why they call it a train conductor. Why do they choose that word to be a part of the title? Because the only kind of conductor I can think of is when you're conducting a symphony and you're waving a wand around, and that's clearly not what you're doing on a train.
I wish they would have had a little animation of him like shoveling coal into the fire to make it go faster, because you only make it go so fast. Yeah, and you have that big coal thing behind you. I don't know. I thought that'd be kind of cool. But then I think I ran into the wrong person, or bounty hunters were after me because everyone started trying to board the train and shoot me and whatnot. So I was like, whatever, I think I'm done. But I found one of the areas where the legendary fish is. Because I didn't go fishing. I was just like, I'm staying on the train. But another cool thing happened. By the way, I thought I was getting pretty far in the game. I'm only 28% done.
How many chapters are there?
I don't know. And I don't really care. I'm only 28%. And I thought I was like 50. So I'm like, great. There's still a lot to do.
Probably like 5 or 6 chapters, I imagine.
One of the nights I sat down at the campfire because you were telling me the other day that they were telling stories and stuff. I thought that was kind of cool. Well, people started playing music, and it's like good music.
Wow, I didn't know they did that.
Yeah. And like Javier started playing his guitar, and then someone else started playing their harmonica at a different moment. And I thought, that is so cool. I could tell why that was entertainment back then, because you got nothing going on except for the wilderness that you hear all the time, you know?
Sure, yeah.
So then one time I heard the conversation going on, and I went over and sat down, and it was Charles. Remember the character Charles? Mm-hmm. And a couple other people were there too, and I forgot who it was. But the other two characters were looking at him like, why don't you like sing or something? Why don't you tell us a story? And he's like, oh, I don't have any stories. I don't have any songs. And he just started talking about life. And it was deep.
Yeah.
Like, it was really deep. And like, kudos to the voice actor for Charles, because that guy is spot on. I looked him up. I forgot his name. I had it on IMDb, but he's been in a ton of stuff. He's been in both like movies, sitcoms, and games.
Sure.
But the guy has Charles' voice like to the T.
Yeah, there have been times when I've sat down the fire. The fire was like kind of like one of the first things that I did in the game, just to see what was going on. And I mean, there have been a variety of different things. I don't remember there being any musical instruments being played, but there were people who were singing a cappella at times. There have been times when one of the characters will have a very heartfelt, like you can tell he's kind of drunk, he's kind of inebriated, but he's talking about Dutch, and he's just talking about how he was a nobody before Dutch found him, and just giving this very like convicted story of just how thankful he is that Dutch found him, and how he gave this dude purpose and stuff. And he gets all choked up while he's talking. I mean, there's a lot of thought that has gone into kind of the campfire stories and the music and just what happens during that kind of period. It's
neat because when you return home to your camp, you do feel like this is your family and you want to talk to them, because I literally every time I start the game, if I start within the camp, I go around and I talk to everybody. I greet them and they greet me back. Oh, top of the morning. And then some people are like, it's not a good morning. No, don't talk to me. Like, they all have their very strong, very distinct personalities.
Sure.
So anyway.
So you've been binge playing RDR2?
Yes, I have. Actually, last night, I was like, I'll just play a little bit of poker. I'll just play a little bit of poker. Sat down and I was about to, I think I had like 40 cents left. And then, it's still 40 cents is not bad in the game, because I mean, money was worth a lot more back then. But then I got to like $3 from 40 cents, and I was like, yes, keep on going.
A whopping $3.40. Oh yeah.
And then it was like, I think it was like 2 or 2:40 in the morning.
You start realizing,
oh
man,
my gosh,
this is a lot of inflation.
Yeah. I was like, I got to go to bed. I gotta watch the time,
That's the mark of a good game right there, is when you realize it's 3:40 a.m. and you've just been enjoying yourself. And I know exactly what you mean, because when I play RDR2, I have the same exact problem. I think that there have been a few games now that really excel at causing you to forget what time it is, and you just get into the game. And then, I mean, Sea of Thieves is just like that, where like you're playing and then suddenly it's 3 a.m. and you're like, what happened to the time? I've got to go to bed. And you don't even want to go to bed. Like, you'd rather keep playing, but you have to have discipline and force yourself to go to bed if you want to be functional at all at the job the next day. But I had a funny story too about RDR. So like I was on my horse, just on some random path somewhere, and I realized that I hadn't cleaned my guns. You can clean your weapons,
right?
So I'm just sitting on my horse, and I'm just using my terry cloth or whatever it is, and I'm just, and actually, if you do that, did you know that the attributes of your weapons will also erode, like the more dirty and worse that your gun gets? I had no idea that was actually part of the game, but it is. And so when you clean it, and you have to like actually hit the button really fast in order to get them up, because there's kind of like there's a timer that happens that goes around kind of the button that it shows you that you're supposed to press. And so I was doing that, and then I had just finished cleaning the second gun, and there's this dude who looked like Colonel Sanders who was like on a horse and was kind of walking by. And he's just like, "Hey, how you doing?" And so like I was trying to like greet him, but instead of pressing the correct button, I pressed the wrong button. So I ended up aiming my gun at him, but I didn't shoot him. I just aimed it because what happens is like normally when you greet someone, you have to hold down the left trigger and then hit the X button to greet. Yeah. Well, I had my gun that I wasn't aiming at, but I had my gun just kind of chilling, and so it just instinctively pressed the L trigger, which caused me to aim it right at him. And he goes, "Oh, well, I'll see how it is. Okay, give me a second." And he starts rummaging, and he pulls out his gun, and he starts shooting me. And I'm like, no, like I didn't mean to do that, and so I was trying to like avoid him and whatnot, and he kept shooting. So then I kind of like out of instinct also like shot him like a couple of times. I didn't kill him or anything, but he's like, "Ow, he shot me," and he's still trying to shoot me. And so finally I'm like, okay, look, I don't want to kill this guy. This is a complete misunderstanding. So I end up selecting my lasso, and I lassoed the guy off his horse. He's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And like he was just so indignified, and I end up like I left him there, and he got out of the rope, and then he kept shooting me. So then I ended up having to lasso him a second time, and then just hog tie him, and I just left him there.
Good grief, for the crows to peck at him.
He's like, "Where are you going?" Oh man.
Oh, I have another story that you remind me of it. I felt horrible because I did kill the guy, but I was riding by this. I saw this house, and I rode by, and I saw farm animals, and I went, where is everybody around here? And there was a rancher there that was there. He's like, "Hey, this is private property. Why don't you get out of here?" And so I think I was off my horse, so I casually, diffused the argument, and I tried getting back on my horse, but it wasn't good enough. And so the guy started shooting at me, and I was about to die. And so I shot back, and I, ended the guy. And then I felt horrible because you're like, "Get off my ranch," and go. I thought if it was that time and there was a bunch of people who are riding around your ranch on your private property, of course you're going to be suspicious and start maybe trying to defend yourself in your private property, little patch of land that you have, And then I killed the guy, and I'm like, great. I felt horrible. I thought, is there a way to reload the game? I felt terrible.
That's where the manual saves come in handy.
Yeah, really. Even though it was just a game, it's funny because I was like, I felt terrible.
Yeah, there is a real sense of consequence in the game, which is just, it's one of the many qualities of the game. I will tell you, too, that I kind of find Dutch annoying.
Yeah.
I do like other characters in the gang, but Dutch is someone who he's already rubbing me the wrong way. I don't know if that was the intention of the game designers and storytellers from Rockstar to have this in there, but to me, it's just kind of like, yeah, dude, you're, I'm not digging you.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what goes on as the story continues, that sort of thing. But I really do like Arthur Morgan's personality. I think his voice is fantastic. And I really dig watching John Marston, who was the character from the first Red Dead Redemption game, just seeing a younger version of him, seeing him when he's kind of in the throes of being in a gang, that sort of thing, because there's almost kind of an immaturity to John Marston that is not prevalent or noticeable with Arthur Morgan. Right. Yet when you play the first Red Dead Redemption, he's a bit older, he's a bit wiser. So yeah, just little observations there.
It's funny to play this game. This is like one of the only prequels that comes out where you're like, man, I really want to play the first Red Dead Redemption now.
Yes.
The first game sort of thing. Even though that one was an earlier game in the series.
Right.
I want to go back and play that one. Matter of fact, if they brought out, if they brought out the DLC with that game with this graphics, I would spend $60 all over again.
Oh yeah, totally, easily. Yeah, if there was some way where they could like somehow inject the first RDR with the game engine of RDR2, oh, hands down, they would have another. And honestly, I think that a lot of gamers out there would have the same sentiment as us. I think they would totally purchase it.
And what makes me wonder if they're going to continue to go backwards in the series, because all these characters have depth. None of these characters are really shallow. I mean, you could start earlier with John Marston, or you could start earlier with Charles, or you could start earlier with Mr. Morgan. Mm-hmm. You could start earlier before they all got with Dutch. So they can even go further back in the story.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Rockstar ultimately decides to do. But I mean, if the time between the first RDR to the second RDR is any indication, we could be looking at another 8 to 10 years before the next installment comes out. I mean, that's the bummer about this sort of thing, especially considering, like, I'm fast approaching 40, and I'm thinking, man, like, I want to be able to experience more of these games on a quicker basis. I mean, like, if I'm only experiencing one game per decade or something like that, it's like, dude, I'm going to be like a geriatric old man by the time, like, we get to like RDR 6 or something. But anyway, in addition to Red Dead Redemption, I was also playing, of course, more Soul Calibur 6. And been really enjoying that mostly on the PC, just because with the graphics bump, I mean, now I'm back to just where I want the Soul Calibur experience to be. And then I'm curious too about is that when I get an Xbox One X, which of course you and I talked about how we're both looking into possibly getting one for Black Friday to try and take advantage of the discount. I really am curious to see how closely it matches the graphics fidelity of what you see on PC. And I believe it's probably going to be pretty close, if not the same, just because even on the game case, they kind of showcase that as a feature. It's like, oh, by the way, this is Xbox One X enhanced. So I do think that is going to be satisfying to be able to play that on like an upgraded platform. There was also a couple of weeks back, there was a K-pop, which is Korean pop.
Right.
KDA which is it's an all-female pop band group, was hired by Riot Games to make this music video of sorts, but for the game. So they took like 4 female characters from League of Legends, and then they ended up using their latest song called, I think it's like Pop/Stars. I think that's what it's called. But it was fantastic. I did some more research on that, and they had hired out the same company that does a lot of the Gorillaz music videos. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those.
They're animated.
Yeah. So they did a fantastic job with the music video they did for League of Legends. I mean, just the art direction is AAA. It is awesome. And the ideas of what they did with the different characters and the sets and everything else, you've got to check it out. When I was doing the podcast recording with Senor Bueno Rico a couple weeks back, we were just seeing. We had just seen it right before we did the recording, so we were actually talking about it a fair amount. So I definitely encourage you to check that out, Stu. I think you're going to be like, well, impressive. I also have been playing King of Fighters.
Wow.
As well as Samurai Showdown 2. Because you and I talked recently about Samurai Showdown 2 and about how cool it was and everything else, and that was not lost on me, Steve. So I ended up...
so much is lost on you, Russ. I'm surprised that wasn't.
I know. It's amazing what actually sticks, because most of everything else just kind of sloshes off. Yeah, man. But I was looking at Xbox Game Pass, and through the catalog of games on there, they actually have King of Fighters and Samurai Showdown 2. Of course, it's not widescreen or anything. It's kind of like a direct port, so it's like the kind of
4x3.
Exactly, 4x3. But what a trip down memory lane of being able to play those games and just remember how much I enjoy, because both of those games were made by SNK.
Right.
And it's just, obviously it looks very, very dated. I mean, like it's nowhere near like what we experienced today. But man, still the gameplay wise though, it's so cool how when you played an SNK game, there was just a certain kind of style and experience that was very exclusive to them.
Artistic flair kind of deal.
Yeah, they had the artistic flair and the way the controls moved and everything else. I mean, it was undeniably SNK, and I've always appreciated that. Aside from that, though, just of course, we had to prepare for my daughter's birthday, which happened last week, and so that was just a very fun time as a parent. Of course, my wife was freaking out because she was having to put all the TLC into the decorations of the house. My daughter, for those of you listening out there, she has discovered the movie Frozen, and as a result, she wanted to have a Frozen themed birthday party, and so kudos to my lovely wife for being able to put that together. Lots of fun. Anyway, let's segue over to the. Oh my goodness! It's what did we decide to call it, Steve?
Well, it's going to be this week in anniversary of games and movies.
This week in. What? Say it again.
This week of anniversary. I don't even know. Friggin' A. It's the week in video game movie anniversaries. Oh, jeez.
Anniversary game this week.
Your game, birthday, aging, long time.
Birthday would be a good one too, actually.
Apparently, just might be, Russ.
Apparently, we're still trying to figure out what the heck we call this segment. The general consensus is this week in gaming and movie anniversaries.
I was kind of getting used to you saying, "Oh no, this is the segment." What are we gonna call it again, Steve? What are we calling it? I'll just go ahead and go for it.
I figured it was enough weeks had gone by. We're like, okay, we really need to nail this down, and I'm glad we did.
So I was gonna pass this one up, but I couldn't. It had such an impact with our female audience. But turning 10, Twilight.
Ah, yes.
When being dead was cool. Being dead and sucking blood. Anyway, moving right along, Russ. That came out November 21st, 2008. Now, turning 25, as of November 19th, 1990, Trace, The Remains of the Day.
Oh, man, haven't heard that title in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. You have heard this one, though. Also turning 25, but coming out a little bit later, as in November 24th, Mrs. Doubtfire.
That was a good movie. It was sad. Like, I kind of actually did not like how it ended, but overall, brilliant performance by Robin Williams.
The late, great, never forgotten Robin Williams.
Indeed.
Turning 30, as of November 18th, 1988, The Land Before Time.
Ah, yes, that was a classic cartoon right there.
Classic. Know what else is a classic? You. That's right. Also, Oliver and Company.
Oh my gosh, that's like one of my all-time favorite animated films.
That was Huey Lewis did the music in that one, I believe.
No.
Was it not Huey Lewis?
It was Billy Idol. He's the one who did the whole Why Should I Worry song.
I thought I could have sworn that was Huey Lewis. Was Huey Lewis one of the voices of the Cats?
I don't think so. I'd have to double check on that, but I don't think he had any involvement with that particular film.
I swore he did.
Huey Lewis in the News was all about the Back to the Future.
Yo, I know that, but I thought he also did the voice of one of the cats. Anyway, so yeah. Also, on the 23rd was Scrooged. I never saw Scrooged. Did you ever see Scrooged?
I don't think I ever did either.
Okay. Well, turning 35 as of November 18th, 1980.
1980. 1983?
1983.
Oh.
A Christmas Story.
A Christmas Story, you say?
Nothing like finishing up your Thanksgiving dinner and think, what's the next holiday? Well, as of midnight, everyone's listening to Actually, no. After Halloween, everyone starts listening to Christmas music, pretty much, to be honest.
No, wait, A Christmas Story. That's the one with Ralphie, right?
I thought that was a Christmas Carol. I don't know. It's a Christmas story. It's the Carol and the Christmas. But man, whatever.
Or maybe it was The Christmas Story. Man, now I'm going to have to MDib it while you do this. It's going to bother me.
We're going to make a different movie. It's called A Christmas Story with like UH. So it's different than as in the letter A or the as in THE. Different title every time. Oh, man. Let's see. So, yeah. A little bit later on, same year, Terms of Endearment.
Oh, yes. Another classic from the 90s, was it?
1983, Russ.
1983?
That's right.
Oh, man. I thought that was, man. It was that old.
And I haven't saw this one, but Sleepaway Camp.
Never heard of it.
I didn't think you did.
Thank you for throwing that one in there.
Okay, onward to games. Let's forget about the stuff that we don't know anything about. Go stuff to that we do know about, you know? November 18th, 1993, turning 25. Cybermorph.
Oh, by the way, it is the one with Ralphie. You'll poke your eye out, kid.
Okay, there you go. That's when BB Guns had the bad omen from then on. I looked at you and said Cybermorph, and you...
Cybermorph, that doesn't ring a bell.
Really?
Did I play Cybermorph?
No, you didn't. But that was the pack-in game that came with that, excuse me, with the Atari Jaguar.
Man, I do not remember that at all.
Well,
I remember the Atari Jaguar, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, well, don't feel too bad because it's rated as like the worst pack-in game that ever came with a system. So
gotcha.
Anyhow, also turning actually on the same date, but not 25. 20 is A Bug's Life.
Okay.
For the PSP. Let's see. Same day, November 18th, but turning 15. Tokyo Extreme Racer 3.
I think I played that one.
Yeah. I had friends in high school playing that one. Still. Oh, we're all talking about Rockstar. Manhunt also turns 15.
Manhunt.
This one's for you. Mario Kart Double Dash.
Ah, yes.
And Metal Arms, Glitch in the System.
I remember that too, yeah.
I do. I know you remember that one. Yeah. I think you were talking about that way long ago. I have a good memory. Anyway, moving on, November 20th, 1998. Half-Life.
Oh, now that is one that is near and dear to your heart of hearts. Deep in your cockles.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that Half-Life 3. Anyway, and turning 25 of November 20th, 1993, Claymates.
I never heard of that one.
I think that was for the Super Nintendo, that's probably why. November 21st, 1998, turning 20, Russ, Tomb Raider Trace, Adventures of Lara Croft.
Yes.
Not only that, The Legend of Zelda. I can't pronounce this. Ocarina of Time?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ocarina of Time, yeah.
I don't know that one. And turning 15 is World Rally Championship Trace. We got some like the third sequels.
A lot of Spanglish going on over here.
Hey, you know, we're living. It's 2018, 2019, Russ. Now you got to know two languages, or you could blend the two together. It's like 1.5 languages.
It's where you combine like 99% English and then you just toss in a little Spanish for like one number.
No, it's more like 99.5 English, and then the 0.5 is the Spanish.
I see.
Yeah. Okay, November 23rd, 1993. This one's for you. Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos.
Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos?
Yeah. Come on, Russ.
What year was that?
1993.
Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos?
Oh, Sonic the Hedgehog, chaos.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all. I remember there was Sonic 1,
man,
2,
what's
and
the matter
3.
with
You
you?
had Sonic and Knuckles. You had Sonic CD.
Well, Russ,
Especially in the early
apparently
90s.
you didn't play them all.
Weird. There's even like a Sonic Spinball
What
back
were
in
you
the day.
doing, man? Too many Sonic games for you to keep track of. I'm
Jeez.
disappointed. And last but not, last and least. November 24th, 1998, turning 20, Test Drive 5.
Did you ever play that?
I think I played it once. Yeah, and I didn't really have an effect on me. I was like, okay, yeah, it's another driving game. You know, whatever.
Well, thank you very much for that segment there, Steve. It's always
you
a pleasure.
got it, Russ.
Well, I see it as no other option than to get into
Okay.
our topic of the day.
Okay. Da, da, da. I don't know if that was you trying to imitate Tarzan or the monkeys you're swinging with.
Actually, it was the mating call that the monkeys gave to Tarzan.
That's awkward.
Awkward and attractive. So our topic of the day is the success, fall, and revival
right.
of Japanese developers. I have been very fascinated by how this journey has progressed.
How? Right in your face.
That's right. When it comes to Steve and I,
What's up?
we have been gamers for quite a while. And we owe a great deal of gratitude toward the Japanese developers for really shaping a lot of our childhood experiences as
Imagination.
it applies. Yes,
Yeah.
to imagination, to entertainment. And it's amazing. What I want to do is to break this up into 3 different chunks, hence the actual title of the topic of the day. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to setting the stage here, going back to gaming in the 1980s, 1990s, you really had, I would say, just a very dominant position when it came to the Japanese video game companies. Like, just every big game that I can think of that came out came from some sort of studio from the land of the rising sun. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting to me to look at just what all we had going on back then. Like, for instance, you had the home market that was just getting, especially in the 1980s, that was getting established. Like, you had the US company Atari, but then the Nintendo Entertainment System came out and just absolutely dominated. You also had the Sega Master System come out. Of course, you had your TurboGrafx 16, which was a little bit of a different story altogether. But for the most part, like the giants were coming from Japan. And also, you had the golden age of the arcade scene, where that was where if you wanted to have kind of the premium experience when it came to gaming, that you would go badger your parents into convincing them to drive and drop you off at some sort of local arcade scene. And of course, companies such as Namco and Sega, those were like the huge Goliaths of the arcade scene. They were always coming out with something new. And you had different companies like Capcom also come out with some huge titles like Street Fighter 2, for instance.
Oh, it's a staple.
Yeah. So one of the things that was interesting about that time period was that you didn't have cloud gaming. You didn't have a lot of the crazy high graphics fidelity. If you actually were to replay one of these titles today, they're actually pretty short. However, what I think is very interesting is that these developers introduced and established solid gameplay mechanics that really have been employed and duplicated and really been used as a foundation for a lot of games that even come out to this very day. They've been expanded upon, of course, but it's interesting when you think back to a lot of the classic games that we played, how stable and solid those games were, and just in terms of kind of the button mapping and almost the conditioning of your thumbs, so to speak, as like how you're supposed to get past a boss or you're supposed to survive a certain level. I mean, like there were a lot of hardcore rules back in the day too. Like certain games, you weren't allowed to get hit once, otherwise you'd die and you'd have to restart the whole level over again, or in some cases, the whole game over again. So it forced you into this funnel of sorts where you had to really learn how to master the game. But then there became with that a overarching appreciation for just how these developers actually went about making these games. And that's a very big deal considering that there was no roadmap back in the day. This was something that they were on the frontier of, that they were having to go through and really just kind of find their way along. But really, you had several developers be able to come up with their own system, and it was something that they were able to use and reuse for sequels and future titles as well.
One thing I don't know why they ever did it this way either, but when you're playing the arcade, if you wanted to continue, you just put another coin in and you continued. And
right.
To keep on dumping money in there.
Coin gobblers.
Till the game was done. When it came to the console systems, they only gave you like a set amount of lives, or you had to go get more lives somehow, little one-ups. And if you ran out of lives, you were done playing the game. Yeah. I thought, I couldn't comprehend that. Like, okay, I own the game. Like, and I always can't dump quarters into my home console. I shouldn't have to because I own the thing. But why couldn't they just allow me to continue the level? And if I got tired of it, or I couldn't pass it, or I had to go to bed, or I had to go to school, then I would turn off the machine, and then I would have to start all over again, obviously. But if you I remember I played a lot of the little spaceship shooters, and they only give you a couple, 4 lives or 3 lives. And then after that, you're done. It took an hour to get to level 4, and then you're done. You just start over at level 1. Like, oh, man, I'm done with this game. I'll turn it off. I never understood why they did that.
Well, and I think too that just at that time period, you didn't have very much memory, and so the amount of options that were available to you in terms of being able to give the gamer kind of a helping hand were limited. But I also think too that was kind of part of Japanese culture, honestly. It's like they have been known not only in the gaming world, but in just all the different types of trades that they do, or the type of work they do, or whatever it is, that they tend to be just masters of. If you're going to be a chef, you got to be just this excellent chef that knows what they're doing. If you're going to know how to make katana swords, for instance, you've got to really know your craft and be able to master and do really well at it. And I think that some of those sensibilities were integrated into the game mechanics of the game.
And that's probably the case because I don't think it was a bad memory, because there was codes you could put in the game and get 99 lives.
True.
There we go.
Yeah.
Easy enough. I could die 50 times and still beat. Yeah.
Well, and back in the day too, games were a lot more hardcore. Like that's something that you and I have talked about on a number of occasions, where games of today are nowhere near as difficult as the games back in the 8-bit and 16-bit days. So I said, those games were a lot shorter, and as a result, I think the difficulty was ratcheted up. Also, too, though, those games were very novel in their approach to things, and people had to really learn how certain games worked. I mean, that's why you had certain people that, just off the top of my head, Yu Suzuki from Sega, and Yuji Naka was also from Sega. Yu Suzuki was the one who just was kind of the main game designer for AM2, which was responsible for making all of those different Sega arcade games, whether it was Outrun or Daytona USA or Virtua Fighter, Virtua Racing, Space Harrier, Afterburner. Virtua Cop. Yeah, I mean, and then you had Yuji Naka, who was pivotal in Sonic the Hedgehog and doing Nights into Dreams and some other ones as well. You also had, of course, Miyamoto from the Nintendo camp doing all of the Zelda and Mario games. Just a wealth of different types of approaches as it applies to game design and game mechanics, that sort of thing. So it's interesting. Well, I talk about how dated the graphics are by today's standards, but for their time, actually, I mean, they were really pressing just what was possible. And I think too, one of the many qualities of the games that came from Japan were that they were just very beautiful. If you think about like a lot of the art direction that went into those games, and especially as time went on and you had sequels of various titles going on, I mean, you had a lot of imagination that was being displayed in these different titles, and it was something that I think was, I don't know, it was a unique opportunity for the West to be able to appreciate a lot of the different types of styles and tastes in art and style that was coming from Japan, that I don't know if it would have been embraced in a different format as quickly. But in gaming itself, like they're just, as the graphics got more mature and you got to see more like cinematics and that sort of thing, you began to have a more of an appreciation for just how they would do it. Because, like a game like Kingdom Hearts, for example, has a kind of a mix mash of sorts where you have Western characters from obviously the Disney staple mixing in with different characters from more of the, what is it? It's what's the company
Final
name?
Fantasy.
No, but Square, right?
Yeah,
Square Enix.
Yeah.
So there, that's just a great example of showing just, wow, there is a defined difference there between the way characters are designed and that sort of thing. But that's not a bad thing at all by any stretch of imagination. It's really, really cool. So looking at past this, I mean, so we've established that's where they were back in the 80s and 90s, and something happened along the way, and I kind of label it as kind of like the downturn of sorts when it comes to the Japanese developers. But I gave it some thought as to what was going on, because there was a bit of a tipping of the scales that took place where suddenly you had more of the Western developers begin to come out with these AAA titles, and you didn't see nearly the aggressive stance that the Japanese developers had. And I mean, it's widely known that Japanese culture is known to be stubborn and not embrace changes to methodology. And I think that as a result kind of hurt them in the industry because they refuse to evolve. And I think that is prevalent when you start to play a lot of these games that were coming out kind of more in the early 2000s, where they continued to rely upon a lot of the game mechanics that garnered them success in the 80s and 90s. So like Final Fantasy, for instance, when it was back in the Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, so on and so forth, like you had more of a turn-based combat system in play, right? So like you would select what you wanted your characters to do, and then the CPU would select what they want to do, and it was just this turn-based combat. And that was very successful back in the day, but then as the gamers began to mature and have more expectations in terms of what they expect from combat from an RPG, you start to look at that and realize, man, this is kind of getting dated. Like you want to have more sophisticated AI. You want to be able to be more realistic. And so looking at games like other RPGs such as Fable or The Witcher, for example, there was a much more advanced approach to how you could combat enemies in real time as opposed to having something that was turn-based. And this is just one example, but I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So I was going to give you my take, whether you liked it or not. I think basically what happened is I think the Japanese games were tried and true in the beginning, and I think when games came out, it was a child's toy in a way. You had adults that played them, but by and large, they were marketing to a younger.
I mean, we knew adults that loved playing Super Mario.
Right? Yeah. I mean that. A 16-year-old introduced us to it when we were like 4 or 5, 6 or 7 years old, around there, sometime elementary school. But he ended up abandoning it and didn't go forward with it. We did, but the Japanese games kind of, when they were making them, they had this fantasy aspect to all the games, this real fictional science fiction fantasy aspect. I think that's fine up until a certain point, but when your core gamer base grows up, they want to see something different. Instead of like this game that rode on rails, that's fine, but the gamer wanted to have more of an open area. You're not locked into a certain path. You wanted more realism to your game, not all this fantasy stuff. And so the Western taste changed and the Japanese taste stayed the same. So I think that was part of it, where this side of the ocean, we wanted just something different that was offered to us and they didn't over there. The other thing that I believe happened is in Japan, with the culture difference, they like their mobile stuff. You have, it's a smaller island. It's not the size of the U.S., and your living space is smaller.
Yeah.
You commute a lot more, and work is higher in demand of you. And so when you graduate college, your priorities change heavily, and they're more interested in the mobile stuff like the Game Boy and the Game Gear and the PSP. Over here, we're not that big into it. Yeah, it sold a little bit, but not nearly as much as it did over there.
Right.
So over here, we liked our console. We like, the bigger screen on the TV, the home theater system. We want to connect to the internet, connect to everybody else to play multiplayer open world games. Over there, that's not the thing. And so it's hard for them to adopt all these different kind of ideas and tastes because they want to do what they want to do. We want what we want. And there's kind of a clash that happens. So, and I think also with the Western game developers knowing exactly what the Westerners want and growing up with all the ideas in our heads of the early Japanese games, well, we've just picked up where they have left off, and the Western is feeding the Western taste. Yeah, no,
that's a very good point with regards to the mobile market. And I think too that what's interesting to acknowledge is that you have an entire generation of gamers that just absolutely loved all the games that the Japanese developers were creating for Nintendo and Sega and so on and so forth. And so those people have been getting older and older, and because they're so inspired by the games, they all of a sudden decide, hey, I want to make my own game studio too, because I love games. I want to be able to create some cool stuff. And so then you have the kind of the genesis of sorts when it comes to more of the Western game studios. And so then you start to have this new type of thinking, this new line of thinking that's very Western and trying out new and different ways of creating a game, that sort of thing. And I think at first that you had some struggles, but I think that ultimately they began to have more forward thinking in terms of the gameplay mechanics, the technology itself, and the storytelling. And so, I mean, storytelling from a Western game is distinctly different from something from Japan. I also think that it was right around that time too that Japan as a country got hit with a recession. And so I think that even though gaming didn't necessarily get hit as hard as some of the other markets or industries in Japan, I do believe that as a result did cause kind of the way that they approached creating a game to kind of stick with what works. simply because their population was also kind of hit by things. So they're not looking to spend a ton of money on something that's like the bigger, better thing. So yeah, I mean, I think all those things kind of combined together to all of a sudden kind of impact kind of where they were coming from when they would release these games.
I think Sega is probably the classic example of exactly what we're talking about, because Sega always kind of was a little bit behind Nintendo in a way with the hardware. They had the software, but they were a little bit behind in the hardware.
They were always the first to come out with their systems.
Right. And then it seemed like the Sega system was the harder platform to develop games on. So like
Which one?
The Sega was like the Saturn.
Oh, yeah.
And anyhow, the marketing people behind Sega were trying to do more westernized stuff, and the Japanese, folks on the Sega end were saying no. And there's a bunch of videos on YouTube about this, about the marketing behind Sega, and there's marketing guys that were trying to develop this new system that would be more Western friendly in a sense and kind of be more of an open platform. And Sega said no. And that's when like the PlayStation came out, Sony, and that was Sony's system. And then people from Microsoft actually approached Sega and said, hey, we got an idea. What do you think? We're new to this. We want to get your take. Maybe we can be partners. And then again, Sega said, no, you do your thing. We're going to do our thing. And so Microsoft went, okay, well, we'll do our own thing then, I guess. So we'll kind of, try this out. And I did. And the Xbox came out and was super successful. And then that's, when Sega ended, basically.
Yeah, they bowed out of the hardware market. What's interesting about the Microsoft thing is that actually when the Sega Dreamcast was created, it was running Windows CE on there. So they actually did partner with Microsoft.
Right.
And I think that was a good kind of foot in the door for Microsoft to kind of figure out how this whole gaming industry thing works. But
it was because Sega was a little bit stubborn and advancing forward and evolving that they shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I think that there was, especially for that particular example, when it comes to Sega, I think there was a bit of a tug of war going on between the bosses in Japan versus the folks out here in America, and you could see it left and right. I mean, even with Sonic the Hedgehog, not to digress too far off this topic, but Sonic, the character, was actually designed like you with a lot of American sensibilities in there, and the Japanese executives actually hated the way Sonic looked, but they understood that type of character would really appeal to the Western market. And of course it did, and it took off and everything else. But, so yeah, it was interesting to look at during that time period. Once again, you had like Epic Games come forth, and you had EA games come, and you had just a lot of these different Western style studios kind of make their mark, so to speak, and be able to build up large franchises and become more and more successful. So, and I remember you and I were talking about it too. I would say about 5 years ago, we were commenting on like, man, where are all the games from Japan? Because we really do love a lot of the games that we've played over the decades. And we were just kind of surprised as to just how there really wasn't as much of a Japanese presence at E3 as opposed to years past, where like, man, they just dominated. I mean, like they came out
That's
and
all there was.
Yeah, it was like there was every game too was just like, man, that game's good and that game's good and that game. I can't believe it.
Capcom, Konami, Namco.
Yeah, they were just firing on all cylinders, and they just had this amazing pedigree of games that I mean, it was like, my gosh, like they just. Do they sleep or not? Like, it's like they had so many titles, and then it really trickled down to just maybe a handful of titles that would come out. And you're kind of like, okay. And even those like certain titles would still look really great, they were wrestling with the whole gameplay mechanic situation, and also just some of the graphics engines, that sort of thing. So what's interesting is that now we're in this phase that is kind of it's almost like a rising phoenix of sorts, where I really do get the feeling that there is a revival with the Japanese developers going on. Just in the last 2 years, we've seen substantial changes to how Japanese businesses operate, and they seem to be a lot more open to including kind of Western sensibilities. It's still very much like Japanese lore. A lot of the characters and how they're created is very much more of that Japanese style, which is great. Like, I don't want them to forfeit that. That's part of what makes it so special. But, you know, it's interesting to look at, you know, I wrote down some of the games that are specifically from Japanese studios that have come out over just the last year or two. And I mean, you have Persona 5, you have Nier Automata, Neo from Tecmo, you have Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 2, the remake that's coming out, I think, early next year, that just looks really great. And I think, too, that Japanese developers are embracing some of the U.S. developer game engines. I mean, we know for a fact, for instance, Namco has fully embraced Epic Games' Unreal Engine, and they've used it for both Tekken 7 as well as Soul Calibur 6. And I don't know, I think that those are very good moves for these companies to do. Just you know, in terms of evolving, in terms of not only like being in survive mode, but also just go back to flourishing. You know, I want these, you and I have talked about this in the past too, multiple times, about how like we don't want to see these companies go away. We want them to do well. We want them to be able to continue providing us with these like excellent gaming experiences. I
think we need to go backwards a minute, because we said how stubborn the Japanese companies were. And I don't want there to be a negative connotation with stubborn. I'd rather say hesitant to take risks.
Okay, yeah, sure.
So I think they were very hesitant to take risks because they were very comfortable with what works and what was working for them. Mm-hmm. Versus,
which is weird though, because like when those games were first, like for instance, when Resident Evil was first created, no one had ever seen a game like that before.
Yeah.
So that was, in fact, a risk.
Right. But that was on, like, for example, that was on the Sony system.
Yeah, that was on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
So, but regardless of which system that you're on, you know, if you look at, like, Final Fantasy, or you look at Resident Evil, or you look at Mega Man, or you look at Super Mario, or whatever it is, like, you can take any one of these types of games, and when you take the very first one, that was the moment where all of a sudden this idea formed in a person's head, and they decided to move forward with it. And that is a risk when you consider the fact that that particular approach was unproven. No one knew if people were going to enjoy themselves playing this particular game. But because you had these super talented game designers out there in Japan who were coming out with all these different games, suddenly it's like they were met with all kinds of accolades and success. But I think the problem was they kind of decided to stick with what works.
Exactly.
And that's where, you know, you don't have to take any more risks, because you're like, okay, well, we can just continue this story, or we can make up another story, but just employ the exact same type of game engine or gameplay mechanics, whatever you want to call it. And I think that started to act as a disservice to just as the next gen iterations were coming out and that sort of thing. You needed to have almost like kind of a conscious understanding of just how you needed to make your game evolve. Like, definitely hold on to certain fundamentals, because those things will never change, despite like, you know, how flashy the game looks, that sort of thing. But you definitely need to, like, for instance, with Resident Evil, you know, they needed to move away from like the locked camera angles in the game, because for the time it was like, okay, this is really cool. However, we're getting to systems now that can easily handle environments and stuff. And that's what makes me so excited about Resident Evil 2, the remake coming out, is it looks like now they are taking, once again, kind of the soul of Resident Evil 2 from the first game, having the characters, everything else, but then completely revisiting it in a way that takes advantage of next gen's capabilities. And that's a very exciting time for us to be able to get into that.
And the thing is too, Resident Evil is actually a good example, because if you look at the entire series, I mean, Resident Evil 1 was mind-blowing. Resident Evil 2 was very, very good, but they started to go downhill after that. Resident Evil 6 was almost a train wreck. I mean, they just threw everything at the fan saying, well, hopefully something sticks with this one. I mean, it's an action, martial arts, survival horror. What is it going to be? And that's why Resident Evil, when they just changed the entire formula with Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
And it was scary again.
I mean, even Metal Gear Solid went through a bit of a phase, where we're like, when it first came out, people had never played a game like it. I mean, the first Metal Gear Solid is one of my all-time favorite games.
Yeah. And I'm all the way up to Metal Gear Solid Revengeance, where it's just like, this is not really Metal Gear Solid at all. Still fun. And I guess, for all intents and purposes, it was more of an action game than more, stealth and whatnot. But it was still fun. It was different. They tried something different.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Metal Gear Solid.
And of course, like, what is it? Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain.
Yeah.
That was the first time where, like, wow, like they really, they kept, once again, the fundamentals of what makes Metal Gear Solid so unique and special, but they really, created this open world that Solid Snake could just traverse, and then as well as adding quite a few different types of abilities to the character in such a way that, once again, like, just it felt more next gen, and that's a very, very good thing.
But even if you take, like, for example, Ace Combat. First time I played Ace Combat on the PlayStation was like, wow, this is nuts. And then and the formula stayed the same, and it got better graphically for Ace Combat 2, Ace Combat 3. Now I think we're coming out with Ace Combat 6 or 7, and it's still the same Ace Combat. I mean, you're doing the exact same thing. The story, I can't even tell the difference in the story from the first Ace Combat. It's the same exact thing. I think one year, I think it was about 4 years ago, they had more of an in-your-face style throughout, and you're flying through the cities, and you had more like shrapnel and parts and stuff flying at the camera, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
I think people thought, this is not Ace Combat. I don't know if we're ready for it, or I don't know if it was too much too soon or something. But then they went back exactly to the same formula that they were using before, and the graphics are getting better, but it's literally still the same game.
Yeah. I mean, Devil May Cry is another one that, like, you were a big fan of. When it hit the scene, it was like, wow, like, no one had really experienced like this kind of thing before, and then after a while, you seemed to kind of get bored with the sequels that were coming out. Like, you liked the first 2 or 3 or something like that, and then it just kind of waned, which makes me curious what you're going to think of this new one that they're coming out with, because you're a DMC fan from the OG days. But yeah, I mean, overall, would you say that you're starting to notice a bit more of a comeback from the Japanese studios?
I'm starting to notice it. It's a slow progress, though. I mean, and I was going to mention also, as we're segueing here, with the Final Fantasy, because I mean, we're on Final Fantasy 15 now, and the one everybody remembers most is Final Fantasy 7. Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of Final Fantasies that have been out that have been forgettable, basically. I mean, that's the harsh truth. So something definitely needs to change with the Final Fantasy, and but again. And hopefully they will for Final Fantasy 16, the latest final.
You know the story behind that name, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So we're seeing some changes. Maybe hopefully with the Final Fantasy. Namco the other day when we had 2 or 3 episodes ago or 4 episodes ago, we were talking about how this might be the last Soul Calibur, and we thought, okay, well, here's a bunch of ideas, like, don't make Soul Calibur go away.
Right.
This is a great fighting game, and if they implemented these different ideas, but kept the characters the same, and the music the same, and the fighting style the same, there's elements you can bring over, but introduce more along with it. I mean, we've had Soul Calibur between a lot of different systems, and it doesn't have to necessarily go away. You just can't be bringing out the same game and put some better graphics on it, and that's it. I mean, for all intents and purposes, if we walk away from Japan for a second, we just say Call of Duty. Call of Duty is almost, in a sense, in the same recipe. They're in the same boat. Like, every Call of Duty that comes out, it was almost the same exact Call of Duty.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm starting to notice that the Western studios, not a lot, but just I'm starting to see the beginnings of what the Japanese studios kind of went through during the early 2000s. And Call of Duty is a great example where, obviously the series is pretty long in the tooth. I mean, when you look at just how many Call of Duties have come out, I don't even know how many there are now. But I am noticing that there is kind of this identity crisis of sorts that's going on, where like they've literally made so many Call of Duties, and really the underlying game engine has been, to my knowledge, largely unchanged. Like they still use a lot of the same kind of things, which, I mean, to be fair, that's part of the secret sauce that makes Call of Duty unique. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, what else are they going to do to continue to expand upon this world, make this kind of a refreshed experience? So it's interesting to see. I don't really see other Western studios struggling as much. I think that there's still this rapid ingenuity that's going on in terms of concept design iteration and that sort of thing, as it applies to different genres of games. But I would say I'm encouraged by by the trends I'm seeing with the Japanese studios. I think that's one of the biggest things for me, is that I'm happy to see companies like Tecmo still making games, Namco still making games. Sega, it's unfortunate that they're no longer in the platform business. They seem to still be struggling quite a bit in terms of just trying to find their footing, especially when you consider like what they used to come out with. I mean, they were just innovating like no one's business back in their heyday. But I mean, you just Platinum Games is a studio that they haven't been around as long as some of these other companies, but I feel as though they're kind of like a fresh shot in the arm in terms of the type of games that they've come out with. And I think that they have acted as almost like kind of an inspiration to other Japanese studios. Also, Hideo Kojima, he was with Konami for a very long time. He has his own studio now. He's going to be coming out with Death Stranding. The jury's out in terms of whether or not the game is fun, but in terms of the risks that he's taking, very forward thinking. So yeah, I'm not as concerned about kind of the future of Japanese studios as I was maybe say 10 years ago.
You might be concerned with Nintendo, because if you think about all the games that are coming out and being purchased on this side of the ocean,
it sounds like it's a combination of poaching and purchasing.
It was actually a combination of bought and purchase. Oh. Two words were coming out of my mouth at the same time. I don't know how to.
That part of Steve's brain just went kaput.
I went out. I only have one tongue. So, anyhow, if you look at like this last E3, okay, so we have we're going to have Red Dead Redemption 2 coming out. We have Death Stranding coming out. We have next Gears of War coming out. We're all these hyper-realistic looking games. And then when we go to Nintendo's side, their main thing is Smash Brothers, where it has a bunch of we're going to have Mega Man in there. And we're going to have Mario in there. And okay, great, all the classics of the then time. But here's where Sony and Microsoft are going. Where are you going, Nintendo? That's going to be beyond Smash Brothers and Zelda.
Well, and see, Nintendo just they've carved a niche out for themselves so well in terms of their branding. I mean, they're known as the family entertainment system, and that company is not hurting by any stretch. I mean, when it comes to money, that company prints money. It's amazing, like just how successful the majority of their systems are. The Switch is also just a runaway success, and I mean, even thinking of Zelda Breath of the Wild, for instance. I mean, that got Game of the Year. That's a Japanese studio right there. Terrific game. I mean, like just in terms of its execution. I haven't even beaten it, but from what I've played, I'm like, man, this is a good game, and it gets me excited as a gamer to be able to enjoy more and more of these games from the Japanese studios. Because I mean, both of us are just huge fans of all the different types of games we've played that have come from these studios. And it makes me excited just to see what they're going to come up with next, just simply because I mean, you know how many art books I have, art of this game, art of that game, that sort of thing. It is amazing how talented these artists and designers are in Japan that they are able to create these unique worlds that you just don't see from Western developers. I mean, I think that's one of the coolest things about it is that really, and even from different studios in Europe, whether it's in Spain or it's in the UK or what have you, it's interesting to see kind of the sensibilities and the influences that each one of these regions have that as a result kind of have sway over like how the game looks or feels or what the story is or whatever. And that's a win for everybody who's into games. I mean, it's just great to have that kind of diversity in your gaming experience.
But the Switch isn't necessarily swaying you. Like you still spend most of your time on Xbox or PlayStation. Like they're not bringing anybody new to the fan base, it seems. Right? Maybe like, younger kids and Nintendo loyalists, but they're not swaying anybody new who's never had the Switch or a Nintendo system. Like you're not about to go, Steve, man, you gotta come over here and play the Switch. Oh man, this game, like you're not talking about it. You're talking about Spider-Man on PS4. You're talking about Gears of War and Halo and Overwatch and Red Dead Redemption and Sea of Thieves. All the other games that you're constantly spending a whole lot of time with. Zelda may be cool and you might like it, and it got Game of the Year, which is awesome. But when was the last time you bought a Switch game?
For me, I bought a number of Switch games. I would say maybe a month or two ago, because I was a little behind on my Switch game buying. What's interesting is that Nintendo has carved out, and again, this is digressing off of the main point of what we're talking about, but Nintendo has successfully carved out for itself this, like, I want to call it like the other system of sorts. Where, like, if you talk to groups who are huge fans of PS4 or they're huge fans of Xbox, those two tend to kind of butt heads, right? Like one of them will always, like I have friends who will never ever buy an Xbox because they have a PS4 and they have that fierce loyalty. It's something that we've always had in the gaming industry, where you have this fierce loyalty between systems. However, something that's a bit of a commonality that I have noticed is while the people who own a PS4 will never buy an Xbox and the people who have an Xbox will never buy a PS4, both sides do own a Nintendo Switch. And what's interesting about that is because Nintendo has been able to market itself as, hey, we are the other system. And one of the brilliant things about it is that it's a system that is in fact portable, that you can take with you, that you cannot do with a PS4 or an Xbox. And so that right there is a huge win. I mean, if you look at me, for example, the Nintendo Switch is the first Nintendo system that I have ever officially owned, and I really do love it. I've taken it with me on business trips. I've taken it with me on vacation, and it is a lot of fun to play. Now, you're right in the sense that like that is not a system that I play the most, because it definitely is not. Because I would say Xbox is probably the system I play the most. PS4 definitely has a number of terrific titles on it that I enjoy to play. And then the Switch is just, again, because it's more of a portable system. It's a game that I like to pick up and play, especially like if I'm laying in bed before I go to bed or something. It's fun just to have it. I actually have my Switch just on my little end table there, like just next to the bed. So it's just nice. And it's not just Zelda, but Mario Kart is just a blast to play. I also have Octopath Traveler, which is a lot of fun to play, and Kirby's Allies is another real fun one. I mean, like I have a number of titles on there that are really fun to play, and it is a nice kind of break, I would say, because from the games that are released on PS4 and Xbox, because those tend to be a little more mature, a little more intense, a little more violent, that sort of thing. And so I mean, I don't really see what Nintendo is doing as a mistake or something that is marginalized at all. Now, I will say that, like, you know, the Wii U, for instance, was not a success. But when it comes to the Switch, though, I think that was a terrific move by them overall. So, did you have any concluding thoughts about our topic of the day, Steve?
Concluding thoughts. Well, I would say if Japan stuck with what they do best, and continue to do that, and let the Western do the West stuff, let the East do the East stuff, I think they would be successful. I think, like, if the West started trying to make, you know, Japanese stories with an appeal towards that market, I don't think they'd be successful. And the exact same as if the East tried to make the games, you know, to identify with the West, I don't think it's going to be very successful. But I think if the East did what the East did and the West did what the West did, and we each played our own games. But I mean, you know, we still owned each other's games.
As I say, create games that you excel in, but then have them be enjoyed by everyone.
Correct. Yeah, I think that would be the biggest recipe for success.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Steve. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. Make sure you tune in next week. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/Joygasm for exclusive and early access to the show, not to mention the fact that it will help us out in terms of throwing us a bone here and there. Also, you can follow us on social media and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can listen to our podcast on TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, Spotify, and SoundCloud.com/Joygasm TV. Last but not least, search Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. We'll see you next week.
Bye.